Hello, everyone. Welcome to our conversation today. And I am thrilled to have Alana back. I love and have missed our conversations, and I'm sure you all have very much missed Alana as you've been stuck with me and me alone. Alana just gives that professional touch and calming to all of the sessions.
I listen to you when I'm not there, and I'm like, "Ah, she's so fun." I'm like, "I'm such a Debbie Downer. I'm so serious." And so
No, you're
I'm like, "Okay."
calm.
When I come back, I'm like, "I'm gonna bring more energy. I'm gonna be funner when I get back."
No, no, no. Alana is the calm to my storm. It's why I need you, girl. Oh my gosh. No, I love it, and I love what you bring to the conversations. I know our listeners do too. That's why we're such a good pair. So, welcome back. I was telling our listeners that this Maycember is a thing. I just heard that term. I never heard it before, but it makes so much sense. And Alana's in the middle of Maycember with all of the kids' activities are winding up at the end of the year. So much, so much going on for all of you too. And anyways, glad to have you back. And we're talking quick episode today because we're talking about this question that does come up often when those of you who are experiencing betrayal, you're going through the journey, navigating all of it. Who do I tell and not tell is the question. And I think that's such a good question. I think we have some good little nuggets to share today around this to help guide you around who should I tell and not tell. I think how also might be in there. How do I tell?
Oh, that's so good. I didn't even think of that. I think people's go-to initially, this isn't across the board, but generally speaking, I see the go-to is tell no one.
Right?
I need to just keep it to myself. I need to deal with it. This is so big. I need to contain. And I see a real pull back in isolation. I can't tell anybody this.
Don't you think it's both ways? Like, I can't tell for self-protection, but also I can't tell because I'm being told I can't tell. That was my
Told I can't tell or wanting to protect him.
exactly.
I see both. I see
Yeah. Yeah.
where my female partners want to protect them or they are told you can't tell anybody this. This is my stuff. You can't share this.
Yeah. Either way, there's this I can't, and we isolate.
With that isolation, I think about different times in my own journey, and that definitely is my own go-to, is I don't want to tell people. I don't want the shame. I don't want people looking at, like, what's wrong with her. I
Mhm.
don't wanna answer questions that are painful for me or have conversations that I'm not ready to have, and so there is, for me, a big pullback of, I need to get my own bearings before I can talk to anybody. And I think
Mhm.
there's a period of that is actually completely okay.
I agree.
And if I stay in that too long, then almost that the walls that created so much protection then almost become a prison.
Absolutely. Then it becomes not helpful because of the type of isolation that happens and what happens in that isolation. If you're not flourishing and growing and learning, then it's going to hinder you. But I totally agree with what you're saying there. It's fear of the judgment, the shame, the blame, and even like not what's wrong with me, but even like I don't want people to say what's wrong with him because it's a reflection on me still. Like, well, I chose him. So what's wrong with you that you chose him? So I don't want you to look at him that way. And then there's but if we do work things out and things are better, then I don't want people looking at him that way and us that way because you're still hoping for the happily ever after ending story of that. So there's so many, I think, thoughts that go into this question. It's such a tricky one. It's nuanced for sure.
Yeah, nuanced and so individualized.
So much.
Because what's right for one client in front of me will be totally different than what's right for another.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we begin with is giving ourselves permission to not be the same as anyone else and really take that time for ourselves to figure out what we need.
So that's probably what I would say, what you were talking about there, like this initial isolation, taking a step back and regrouping and gathering. your senses, your facts, all of that, maybe that's when you reach out to a professional and get your bearings. Anything else in that space that you would suggest before we talk about like, okay, now how do you reach out and who should you tell? Anything more around that individual?
Well, the reality is the more of a support system we have and the more secure attachments we have and the more healthy nervous systems that we can co-regulate with, the better we will heal.
Yeah.
And so I put that out there because it is not uncommon to have a first time client who's been sitting with this for years. And I am the first person that they've told their story to. And yeah, it's just so common. And so if you're listening to this and you're hurting and you're in pain and you're really not relying on anyone, there is a way that really could help you heal. And so I want to be very clear with that. And that doesn't mean go shouting it from the rooftops. That doesn't mean jumping on Instagram and making a post, but it is about finding those people in your life who can be part of that. Because again, the more support system you have creates more recovery capital. And the more recovery capital you have gives us the ability to be able to move forward and heal better.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, to your point, I think when we're not quite sure who to trust, and let's talk about that in a minute, how to assess that. Maybe right now it is reaching out to a professional who does get it and hold very sacred space. Those initial consults where, yeah, you're the first person they really shared their story with are so sacred. I hold them very sacred, and it can be so relieving to get it out and tell someone who does get it and is neutral, who isn't going to judge you, doesn't know even your partner, or is going to go spread and like all the things that we were just talking about earlier that you might be worrying about. And this might be your first step if you're in this space, because getting it out and releasing and sharing is a huge first step in owning your story and in your healing journey. So it's vulnerable. I validate that it's vulnerable. And so reaching out to someone who is trained in this area, I think is really also important so that you do have sacred space held for that story. Now, let's talk about, how do you know someone is safe, Alana, to reach out and get that support that you're talking about, to start building that capital?
Okay, so this is where we have done past episodes, and this is really uncomfortable as a professional. As the more you grow and the more you learn, then you like in the past, if someone goes back to maybe our really early podcasts, there's pieces I've grown from or since then. And so you probably heard me somewhere at some time go, find safe people, find safe people. I've become a little more, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but what I have learned is if we put people in just one of two categories, safe or not safe, it really limits our ability of letting people in our lives and the amount of people that I have pushed away because they could do very little that my brain just went, oh, not safe. You're in that category. Oh, you really get betrayal trauma and everything it involves. Okay, good. You're in my safe category. But there were so few people that actually fit in that safe category that there was many ways that I actually didn't let a lot of people in who
Mm,
could be helpful to me.
mm,
And so I think looking for who is emotionally safe plays into it. But I think it's really looking at who in our lives can offer us what. So I have some people in my life who can offer a really good distraction from life, and I'm not going to let them in around any of the betrayal stuff. They are just a great friend that I can go have lunch with or go shopping with. And I am going to let that relationship be just that. And that's good and healthy for me. And
right.
then I'll have other people who know, like Amie, who know all the ins and out. Like Amie knows my ugly. And yeah, Amie knows.
We know each other's ugly.
Amie knows. And so I have those. where, yeah, Amy is like full green light safe. But this other friend, where years ago I would have actually written them off and put them in an unsafe category because they couldn't hold all of me, I have since learned that it's okay to give them the parts that feel right for me and allow for privacy in other areas of my life and let those parts be with those other people.
This is
Did
so
that come
emotionally
out
mature.
right?
No, it did. I'm following you, but this is so emotionally mature because I think a lot of women, like you said, to your point, are associating safe in it's black and white, all or nothing. And if you can't take all of me, then you're not safe. And I think this goes back to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at this as attachment as well. I want to attach in a secure way in a primary attachment with all the people. And you don't do that with all the people. So this might be the wrong word, but I'm looking at this as like categories. I have different categories of people. I remember hearing someone talk about this years ago, and I thought it was absurd. This idea that she had friends that she would use when she wanted to go to playground with her kids, and friends that she would have when she needed to do like cooking experiences with like she had these categories of friends. And I just remember thinking the audacity that is just so wrong to put people in categories. Now I'm like, that's so emotionally mature because you're not having to, this is where I think I felt so spread thin in my life with people because I was giving everything and all of me to all the people.
Okay. So this concept, we totally talked about this in our men's intensive around sometimes when I teach people the new concept of vulnerability or transparency, they think that they have to be vulnerable with everybody. And when you have somebody who's been struggling with sexual acting out and they're trying to be vulnerable, it's not appropriate for you to be vulnerable with everybody. And so we have to bring boundaries into this. And so I use that same analogy I use with boundaries around this of letting people into your life, that some people do not come even in your yard. They stay out past the gate or on the sidewalk. Other people come in the yard. Some people we let in the front door, but they just stay in that entryway.
Mhm.
Other people, they get to come and kick off their shoes and sit on the couch. But that's still totally different than the person who's in the kitchen going through your kitchen drawers and cooking with you, which is totally different than the person who's actually hanging out in your bedroom with you.
Right.
And so we do have these different levels of relationships of how much we let people in, and nothing's wrong with you or with them that not everybody gets to be in the kitchen or the bedroom.
Right.
That wouldn't be appropriate.
No. And again, because I think that conditioning and message that I got growing up was, and a lot of women that I work with is everyone needs full access to me. And no, you get to choose who has access to you and what parts get access to. And I think that's where when you learn to trust yourself, this is always going to go back to when you learn to trust yourself and your body and your intuition, that wise femininity, you will be able to ascertain which parts people get. And that is healthy, that is appropriate. There's nothing limiting, selfish, whatever your brain offers you there about that, that the world can tag women if you're not fully accessible to everybody, all parts. That's the messaging that I got and know a lot of women got. But I like this idea of who should I share with? Okay, let me reiterate what you were saying. If I'm in this space where I'm struggling and I'm just trying to wrap my head around what just the freak happened, then I might need some people in my life that can take my children and I can get some support there. They don't need to know what's going on. They don't need to know my life story and all the nitty gritty, but can I utilize certain people that I trust with my kids to say, hey, come, my daughter, come over for a play date. I need a couple hours that you can have time to cry, mourn, grieve, whatever you need there. Taking that self care time, that might be someone. I love what you were saying, people that can be distractions. I think healthy distractions are totally appropriate. So, who might those people be? Start making a list for yourself of what do I need right now? Notice how you have to first identify what you're needing based on where you're at in your journey. And then who do I have in my life that can fulfill those needs? That's so independent, that's healthy all the way around. Now, who do I tell my story to? I think that's a different question.
It is. And a tool that I think can be really beneficial with that is, first of all, just notice who you want to share it with. And then ask yourself the question, why? What am I hoping to get from this? And also, are those realistic expectations? I wanted to be able to share my story with a couple of people, but I wanted them to be able to hold it and get it and understand it. And the reality is, for where they were in their life, they weren't capable of that and may never have been. And so I had to get clear with that.
Yeah.
I think it can be helpful to practice giving a little and then seeing how well that's handled and how well that felt to you. And then you can keep just moving forward slowly with that process as you feel safe and comfortable. I had a client one time and she said, I want to tell this one person. And we processed the whole session on what she was looking for, what she was hoping, her pros and cons, her fears. We took a whole session around just this one person. The next week, she said, yeah, I think I'm just going to still sit on it a little bit longer. Totally fine. Next time we meet, she said, I felt really strongly that she was going to be a person that I could talk to. And she said, I am blown away at how well it went.
Mm.
I've had other times where they say, I've really wanted to talk to this person. I went, I tried, and this person, I think maybe they're going through the wrong thing, but they weren't ready to look at it. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But when we become really clear with what we're trying to do or get out of it, it removes, I don't know what I'm looking for, maybe some of the pressure of it
Yeah.
having to turn out a certain way.
Yeah. No, I think you're onto something because I just made a mental note of if you are clear with yourself in what you're wanting from the conversation and what you're needing from this person, then if they can't give that, you're not going to make it mean anything about you. And I think that's really important is that if this person can't hold space for what you're sharing, don't make it mean anything about you. And this is, again, another emotionally mature way to approach these very delicate conversations. And this is why we have support groups, right? That we offer because people might not get it and know how to hold space for this level of trauma because it is heavy. I think, like what you're saying, if you dip your toe into these types of conversations and you're realizing, yeah, for whatever reason, this person isn't, even though I hope they could be, please know that there are people that can hold space. And I'm going to plug our groups. Go to chooserecoveryservices.com. That's why we have these support groups because women who are going through it will get it and can hold space for you. I would just really encourage you to be clear with yourself. But if the person that you want can't hold space, like they just really don't get it or just can't for whatever reason, don't make it mean anything about you.
Well, you think about it. And when you're going through this, here you are right now, you're listening to this podcast, right? You're probably reading books and you're listening to a lot of things and you're doing all of this to gain the tools to be able to handle it because it is that big and that heavy. Most people don't have these skills.
No.
They're not spending all day listening to podcasts and trying to learn and grow because they don't have the level of pain you have that is driving you to get this help and support. And so we just have to bring that piece of reality into it. And one thing with the groups, Amie has support for women who are going through divorce. There is a group specifically with Choose for women who are going through divorce. There's a group for women who are just new in their healing and need fresh tools. There's also a group for women who are ready to lean in more into their relationship, that they are chosen to stay and they want to stay and they want to lean in. And then there's also groups for couples who are ready to do that couples work. Then we have groups for men who have been betrayed and groups to support women who have been the betrayers. And the reason we have all of those specialized groups is because finding the people whose life experience is somewhat similar to yours or their stage of healing is somewhat similar to yours allows for that higher level of like, I thought I was the only one who felt this way. So Yeah, getting that individualized support in a group setting can be so beneficial.
Yeah. And as we wrap up, I think just the last part of that question, who should I not tell? Again, I'm going to fall back on how important it is for you to trust yourself, which is why, kind of full circle here, when you can take that time with yourself and a professional and start weeding out some of that early trauma so that you can start connecting back towards yourself just a little bit more, trusting yourself just a little bit more. I would say this is how you can determine who's not okay to tell is if your body is feeling just notice even your body. Like, I don't know if you can see 'em on YouTube, but like your body kind of pushes back, leans back. I don't know. Trust what your intuition is telling you. And like you gave that example, Alana, with a client, sit on it. Ask yourself why. What do I expect from this person in response? Do I need that? If I don't get that, what will I feel? So being more curious and taking the time to trust yourself and who you tell and who you not tell, so individual. And just really quickly, if you do tell someone and you realize afterwards, because this has happened to me, where I
Mhm.
thought they were safe and I spilled the beans and I told and they ended up not being safe, please don't beat yourself up. It's okay to pull back and be like, you know what? I thought that this person was safe. I'm realizing they're not. I'm going to just have a clear boundary and move on. You can move on with your head held high.
I love that. And you use the word intuition. I heard you talk about listening to that intuition. And so I heard you say head, heart, and gut.
Mhm.
Check in with each of those. And that process and learning to hone in and then to do that builds that self trust. It's beautiful. So, big sigh. It's hard to come out of that isolation. It's hard to take those steps forward. But as you do, it builds that self trust. You get that support system and it helps that nervous system heal. So, as always, thanks for hanging out with us this week. Thank you for having me back, Amy. It's so good to hang out with you again. And for all of you, we look forward to seeing you next week.
Aren't these conversations just so much better with Alana? I think so. Thanks again for joining us. And remember to head over to chooserecoveryservices.com for a lot of those groups that we mentioned today. If you're interested in additional self paced courses where you can take it at your own pace, Intimacy Within, that walks you through those 7 different levels of intimacy and how you can cultivate healthy within yourself first, I think is a great place to start. I wanted to make this available so that you can take it slow and take it to your professional as you're going through each one of these levels of intimacy. Dig deep because reconnecting back to yourself after trauma requires it. You're also capable of it, especially when you continue to choose healing, choose recovery, and choose you. Take care, everybody.
I'm going to guess that healing from betrayal was something that you never thought you'd have to deal with or hoped you never have to deal with. And doing this type of work is the hardest emotional work you may ever have to do. And you don't have to do it alone. We have coaches and therapists in our Choose Healing groups to help lead you and guide you forward, who have not only learned the tools and resources to help you get to that healing and freedom and peace again, but have walked that path themselves. And in those groups, you're going to find other women who understand your pain, who can say that, me too, and who can give you that support, not just in your weekly group meetings, but that connection between meetings. I encourage you to take that brave step forward, to be vulnerable. It is not easy, but the reward of putting in the work, putting that one step forward as you choose healing and you choose recovery and you choose you, you will be able to move forward and heal.